"Excuse me, ma'am, you can leave the turn-down service. I'll handle it myself." "I'm sorry, Miss Whitaker, hotel policy. It will only take a moment." "I said I'll handle it." "Mom, Emily, please don't make a scene. 15 years, and this is how I find you. I tried, you blocked my number. You never told me. Would you have answered?" Welcome to today's story. If you enjoy emotional drama and powerful family reunions, please like this video and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. And before we begin, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Now, let's go back to where this story really starts. On a humid October morning in Houston, the city Emily Whitaker had sworn she would never set foot in again. Emily had built her entire adult life around the silence she kept with her mother. At 37, she was the senior vice president of marketing for one of the largest tech firms in Chicago, the kind of woman whose LinkedIn profile made people pause and reread it twice. She wore tailored navy suits, drank black coffee out of ceramic cups her assistant kept warm, and lived in a glass condo on the 32nd floor overlooking Lake Michigan. Magazines had written about her 3 times. A podcast had once called her the most quietly dangerous executive in Midwestern tech. Emily liked that description. She had earned it, but none of that was on her mind as her plane banked over the Gulf Coast and began its descent into Houston. She was thinking about the city beneath her, the flat sprawl of it, the heat shimmering off the freeways, and the small house on Holman Street where she had grown up. She hadn't seen that house in 15 years. She hadn't spoken to the woman who lived in it for almost the same length of time, and she had told herself over and over that this trip was professional, only professional, 3 days, deliver the keynote, smile for the cameras, leave. The Houston Diversity in Tech Summit was the biggest speaking engagement of her career. 8,000 attendees, Fortune 500 sponsors, a live stream that would reach hundreds of thousands more. Her name on the front of the program in raised silver letters. Emily Whitaker, keynote, Saturday morning, 9 a.m. sharp. It was the kind of opportunity people spent decades chasing, and it had come to her because her former college roommate Ashley Reyes was now the summit's executive director. Ashley had personally reached out 6 months ago. "We need you, Em. Houston needs you." And after months of polite emails, Emily had finally said yes. She told herself it was a coincidence. The city, the timing, none of it meant anything. Houston was just a city. Her mother was just a person who happened to live somewhere within its city limits. Emily had built walls high enough that geography couldn't touch her anymore. The plane landed. She walked through the terminal in her cream-colored blazer, pulling a small black suitcase behind her. A driver in a black suit held a placard with her name. He took her bag without speaking, opened the door of a polished SUV, and within 20 minutes she was gliding through the streets of downtown Houston toward the Grand Lyric Hotel. The Grand Lyric was the kind of hotel that made even seasoned travelers slow down in the lobby. Marble floors that caught the chandelier light. A glass atrium that climbed 7 stories. A doorman in white gloves. Emily had stayed in beautiful hotels all over the world, but the Grand Lyric had a particular old-money grandeur, the kind of place where senators dined and oil families held weddings. The conference had reserved her the presidential suite on the 18th floor, complimentary, courtesy of the sponsors. She checked in without smiling much. The concierge handed her a keycard inside a leather sleeve. A bellman insisted on escorting her up. She let him because it was easier than refusing. As the elevator climbed, she caught her reflection in the polished gold doors. She looked tired. She always looked tired now. Successful, sharp, expensive, but tired. She wondered briefly if her mother would have recognized her if they passed on the street. Probably not. The girl who had walked out at 22 had been all jagged edges and cheap mascara. This woman was something else entirely. The elevator chimed. The bellman set down her suitcase, accepted the tip she pressed into his palm, and left. Emily was alone in the suite. She had no idea her mother was already on the floor below, pushing a cleaning cart toward the service elevator, her sleeves rolled to the elbow, the faint smell of lavender hand cream rising from her tired palms. The presidential suite was larger than the apartment Emily had grown up in. She noticed that almost immediately. A sitting room with deep velvet armchairs. A dining table that could seat 8. Floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the Houston skyline like a painting. A bedroom with a king-sized bed already turned down at one corner, the white linens crisp enough to cut paper. There was a small box of chocolates on the pillow and a handwritten welcome card from the hotel manager. Everything in the room had been arranged to make her feel important. She didn't feel important. She felt like a woman standing in a stranger's house. Emily set her briefcase on the dining table and walked slowly through the suite, running her fingertips along the back of the sofa, along the cool marble of the bar counter, along the polished edge of the writing desk by the window. She had done this in every hotel she had ever stayed in. A small ritual, a way of claiming the space, a way of reminding herself how far she had come. But the ritual didn't work this time. The space refused to feel like hers. She told herself it was the city. Houston had a particular weight to it for her, the kind of weight she had spent 15 years lifting off her shoulders only to feel it settle back the moment her plane landed. She walked to the window and looked out at the skyline. Somewhere out there, beyond the steel and glass, was the neighborhood she had grown up in. Homan Street, the little wood frame house with the sagging porch. The bakery on the corner that her mother had owned for 22 years, the one where Emily had spent every Saturday morning of her childhood frosting cupcakes and ringing up customers and dreaming about getting out. She hadn't thought about the bakery in a long time. She had trained herself not to. Emily turned away from the window. She opened her suitcase, hung her 2 dresses in the closet, and laid her keynote notes out on the writing desk. The speech was 47 pages long. It was about diversity in technology, about her career trajectory, about the importance of representation in the C-suite. It was, she knew, a good speech, polished, quotable, the kind of speech that would generate clips for LinkedIn and applause lines for the press release. It was also, she realized with a strange flicker of discomfort, completely empty. She pushed the thought away and opened her laptop. There were emails to answer. There were always emails to answer. She had just begun reading when there was a soft knock at the door. Housekeeping, turn down service. Emily glanced at her watch. It was already 7 in the evening. She had been in the suite longer than she realized. "You can come back later," she called out. "I'm working." "Of course, ma'am. I apologize. I'll come back." The voice was muffled through the heavy door, but something in it made Emily lift her head from the screen. She couldn't place what. A cadence. A softness around the consonants. She listened for the sound of footsteps retreating down the hallway, then turned back to her email. She tried to read the next message. She couldn't. The words wouldn't stay still on the screen. She read the same sentence 3 times and understood none of it. It was probably nothing. It was probably the fatigue of a long travel day, the strangeness of being back in this city. The voice had sounded familiar only because, after 15 years, every southern accent sounded a little like home. She stood up. She walked into the bedroom and pulled the curtains closed. She walked back into the sitting room and poured herself a glass of water from the crystal pitcher on the bar. She set the glass down without drinking from it. She paced the length of the suite once, twice, and then stood very still in the middle of the room, listening to nothing in particular. Then there was another knock, quieter this time, almost apologetic. "Ma'am, I'm sorry to disturb you again. The supervisor needs me to complete turndown on this floor before I clock out. It will only take 3 minutes. May I please come in?" Emily walked to the door. She didn't know why she walked to it instead of calling through it. She placed her hand on the cool brass handle. She paused for one beat, then another, and finally she opened it. The woman in the hallway was small. That was the first thing Emily noticed. Smaller than she should have been. Smaller than memory had kept her. She was wearing the Grand Lyrics housekeeping uniform, a starched gray dress with a white collar and a name tag pinned just below the shoulder. Her hair was pulled back into a low bun, mostly silver now, with a few stubborn streaks of brown at the temples. She had a cleaning cart parked behind her, neatly arranged with folded towels and small bottles of amenities. Her hands were folded in front of her, the way hotel staff are trained to fold them, palms together, fingers loose. Emily didn't look at her face first. She looked at the hands. The fingers were thinner than she remembered, the knuckles slightly swollen, the skin on the back of the hands a little papery. but she knew those hands. She had watched them roll out pie crust. She had watched them braid her hair before school. She had watched them count out change at the bakery register. And she knew in the half-second before she allowed her eyes to lift exactly what she would see. Lavender hand cream, the faint, sweet, slightly herbal smell of it. Her mother had worn the same scent for 30 years. She bought it in the same plastic tub from the same drugstore on Westthamer. She rubbed it into her hands every night before bed and every morning after she scrubbed her baking pans. It was the smell of childhood. It was the smell of being tucked in. It was the smell Emily had spent 15 years trying not to remember. Her eyes lifted. Barbara Whittaker was standing in the doorway of the presidential suite of the Grand Lyric Hotel, holding a folded bath towel against her chest like a shield. For a long moment, neither woman spoke. Neither woman moved. The hallway was carpeted in thick crimson wool and it absorbed every sound. Somewhere far away, an elevator chimed. A door closed on another floor. A man laughed. Barbara's face had aged in a way that surprised Emily. Not because her mother looked old, because she looked tired. The deep, settled, bone-level tired of a person who had spent a long time carrying something heavy and had stopped expecting anyone to help her put it down. There were lines around her eyes that Emily didn't recognize. There was a small dark spot on her left cheek that hadn't been there before. Her shoulders were rounded in a way they hadn't been when Emily was 22, but her eyes were the same, pale blue, slightly watery, with the same flicker of stubborn pride Emily had been running from since she was a teenager. Barbara recovered first. She always had. She lowered her gaze the way trained hotel staff are taught to lower their gaze, polite and impersonal, and she stepped slightly to the side. "Good evening, ma'am. I'm here to complete the turn-down service." "I'll be quick." Her voice was steady, perfectly steady, as if she were speaking to any guest in any suite on any floor of the hotel, as if the woman standing in the doorway were not the daughter she hadn't seen in 15 years. Emily opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Barbara pushed her cleaning cart slightly forward, the universal gesture of a housekeeper preparing to enter a room. She still hadn't looked at Emily's face. Not directly. She was looking at a point somewhere just past Emily's left shoulder, the way a person looks when they are willing themselves not to break. "Ma'am, may I come in?" The word ma'am landed harder than anything Emily had felt in years. "Mom," Barbara flinched. It was the smallest movement, just a tightening at the corner of her mouth, but Emily caught it. Her mother's eyes lifted finally and met hers. "Please, Miss Whittaker, please don't." "I'll lose my job." "Mom, what?" "They have a policy. Staff are not permitted to fraternize with guests. If my supervisor sees us, I'll be written up. Please." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Please just let me clean the room. I need this job, please." Emily stepped back from the doorway as if she had been struck. Barbara wheeled the cart inside, head down, and began moving through the suite with the practiced efficiency of a woman who had folded 1,000 towels and turned down 1,000 beds. Emily stood in the middle of the sitting room and watched her mother work. Barbara moved through the suite the way water moves through a familiar channel. She knew exactly where everything was. She knew how to pull back the comforter at a precise angle to expose the inner sheet. She knew how to fluff the pillows in the order the hotel preferred, the larger ones in the back, the smaller ones in front, the decorative one laid carefully at the foot of the bed. She placed a small bottle of mineral water on the nightstand. She set the chocolates in their tiny porcelain dish. She drew the bedroom curtains halfway closed, exactly halfway, the Grand Lyric way. She did not look at Emily. Not once. Emily stood frozen in the doorway between the sitting room and the bedroom. She had given speeches in front of thousands of people. She had negotiated with billionaires. She had fired men twice her age without flinching. And now, standing in a suite paid for by a Fortune 500 sponsor, she could not figure out how to speak to her own mother. "How long?" she finally said. Barbara was folding a hand towel into thirds. She did not stop folding. "How long what, ma'am? Stop calling me that." The folding paused for exactly 1 second, then resumed. "How long have you worked here, Mom?" Barbara set the towel down on the bathroom counter with the same careful precision she had used for every other object in the room. She straightened slowly, both hands flat against the edge of the marble, and finally she lifted her head and looked at her daughter through the mirror. 8 years. Emily felt something cold move through her chest. 8 years. Yes, but the bakery. Barbara turned from the mirror. She picked up a small spray bottle, sprayed the counter, wiped it down with a clean cloth and placed both items back on her cart. She was buying herself seconds. Emily recognized the technique because she used it herself in difficult meetings. The bakery's been gone a long time, Emily. The use of her name after 15 years of silence landed harder than the news itself. What happened? I really shouldn't talk about this here. I have 4 more rooms to do. What happened, Mom? Barbara looked at her then. Really looked. The polite distance dropped away for a moment, and Emily saw the woman underneath, not the housekeeper, not the stranger she had been pretending to be for the last 7 minutes, but Barbara, her mother. Tired and small and proud and ashamed. A contractor. I hired a man to fix the roof and rewire the kitchen. He took the deposit, did half the work, and disappeared. The kitchen failed inspection. The health department shut me down for 90 days. I couldn't make the mortgage. The bank foreclosed. That was 10 years ago. 10 years ago this past March. Emily put her hand on the doorframe. She needed something solid to touch. Why didn't you tell me? Barbara's mouth twisted. It was not quite a smile. I tried. I called you. I called you every week for 2 years after the bakery closed. The number was blocked. I sent letters. They came back. Returned to sender. I drove up to Chicago once. Did you know that? I sat outside your office building for 3 hours and then I drove all the way back. I couldn't make myself walk in. Emily closed her eyes. She did remember the blocked number. She remembered the precise satisfaction of pressing the button on her phone the morning after the fight. She had been 22 and furious and certain. She had told herself it was a small act of self-preservation. She had not thought of it as a wall. She had thought of it as a door, the kind a person could open again if she chose to. She had never chosen to. I didn't know, Emily said. Her voice sounded small to her, the voice of a much younger woman. I didn't know about any of it. I know you didn't. I would have helped. Barbara's face did something complicated then. A flicker of something that might have been hope or grief or simple exhaustion, and then it smoothed back into the careful neutrality of a hotel employee. I have to finish my floor, Emily. I really do, please. She moved toward the door, pushing the cart in front of her. Wait. Barbara paused, one hand on the cart. Please, wait. Barbara stood in the doorway with one hand on her cart and the other hanging at her side. She did not turn around fully. She angled her body just enough to suggest she was listening, but not so much that she was committing to a conversation. I have 11 minutes, she said quietly. Then I have to be on 12. 11 minutes. Yes. Emily walked to the writing desk and picked up the leather folio with her keynote notes inside. She did not know why she picked it up. She needed something in her hands. She set it back down. She turned in a small circle. She walked toward her mother and stopped halfway across the room because she didn't know what to do when she got there. Mom, I have a suite. There's a kitchen. There's a sitting room. Please, just come in for a minute. Just sit down. I can't sit in a guest suite, Emily. I told you. They have cameras in the hallways. They have a supervisor who watches the floor schedule. If I'm in this room for more than 22 minutes, I get written up. 3 write-ups and they fire me. I'll call the manager. Please don't. Why? Because you don't know what it's like here. You think you can call the manager and fix it. You can't. You'll make it worse. He'll wonder why a guest is asking favors for a housekeeper. He'll start digging. He'll find out we're related and he'll fire me for not disclosing the conflict when I took the job. I signed a form. I didn't disclose anything. I needed the work. Emily stared at her. You took this job knowing I might stay here. Barbara almost laughed. It was a small, tired sound. Emily, you're not the only person who stays in 5-star hotels. I clean rooms. That's what I do. I needed a job with health insurance and the Grand Lyric had an opening. I wasn't thinking about you. I stopped thinking about you a long time ago. I had to. The words were meant to be flat, to close a door, but Emily heard the tremor underneath them and she knew her mother well enough even now to know that the tremor was the whole truth and the flatness was the lie. Mom, I have to go. 11 minutes, you said 11 minutes. That was 3 minutes ago. Then 8. Barbara closed her eyes. For a moment she looked exactly like the woman in the photograph Emily had kept hidden in the bottom drawer of her desk in Chicago for 15 years. The one of Barbara at 35 standing behind the bakery counter holding a tray of collages, laughing at something the photographer had said. 8 minutes, Barbara said. She did not come in. She stood in the doorway with the cart between them, as if the cart were a fence she could not climb. Emily walked to the doorway and stood on her side of it. They were 3 feet apart. Where are you living? A studio apartment off Telephone Road. It's fine. Telephone Road. It's fine, Emily. Are you alone? Yes. Do you have, I have a cat. His name is Biscuit. He's old and he hates everyone except me. Emily made a sound that was half laugh and half something else. Barbara's mouth moved at one corner, the closest thing to a smile she had offered in 15 years. Mom, don't. Mom, I am so sorry. Barbara held up one hand. The hand with the swollen knuckles and the lavender cream worked into the skin. Not here, not now. Not while I'm on the clock and you're in a robe that costs more than my rent. If we're going to do this, we're not doing it like this. Okay. I get off at 11. There's a coffee shop on the corner of Smith and Dallas. It's open all night because of the medical center. If you want to talk, meet me there at 11:15. I'll be there. Don't say you'll be there if you won't. I'll be there. Barbara looked at her one more time. Then she pulled the cart back into the hallway, closed the door of the presidential suite very softly behind her, and was gone. Emily stood in the middle of the room. She could still smell the lavender. Then her phone buzzed on the writing desk. She walked over and looked at the screen. A text from Ashley. Welcome to Houston, Em. Did you find what I left for you? Emily read the text 3 times before she understood what it was saying. She read it a 4th time and understood it perfectly and did not want to understand it. She set the phone face down on the desk. She walked to the window. She walked back to the phone. She picked it up. She typed. What do you mean, what you left for me? 3 dots appeared immediately. Ashley had been waiting for her. Meet me in the lobby bar, right now, please. The lobby bar of the Grand Lyric was called the Veranda, and at 9 in the evening it was full of conference attendees in lanyards drinking overpriced cocktails and laughing at jokes that were not quite funny. Emily walked in wearing the same cream blazer she had landed in. She had not bothered to change. She found Ashley sitting at a corner table by a tall potted palm, 2 glasses of red wine already in front of her. Ashley stood up when she saw her. She was 40 now, with the same long curls she'd had at 20, though they were threaded with gray and pulled back in a clip. She was wearing a black wrap dress and the silver bracelet Emily had given her on her 21st birthday, the one Emily had assumed she'd thrown away years ago. Sit down, Ash. Ashley sat. Emily sat across from her. She did not touch the wine. How long have you known? 6 years. 6 years. How? Ashley took a long breath. She folded her hands on the table the way she always had when she was about to say something she had rehearsed. I came back to Houston for my dad's surgery. I was staying here at the Lyric because my mom's house was full of relatives. The morning I was checking out, the housekeeper came to do the room. It was your mother. I didn't recognize her at first. She'd lost weight, but she recognized me. She froze in the doorway and I froze, and we just stared at each other for what felt like 10 minutes. Then she asked me not to say anything, to you, to anyone, and she went back to cleaning the room. Emily was staring at the candle in the middle of the table. The flame was very small and very still. You didn't tell me. I tried to. I tried so many times. The first year I had drafts in my phone I never sent. The second year I called your office and your assistant said you didn't take personal calls. The third year I sent you that Christmas card, do you remember, and you replied with one line and a signature like I was a client. After that I stopped trying. You should have tried harder. I know. You should have called me. You should have flown to Chicago. You should have grabbed me by the shoulders and made me listen. I know, Em. I know I should have. I was a coward. So why now? Ashley met her eyes for the first time since she sat down. Because 2 years ago your mother had a heart attack, a small one. She was fine. But I went to see her in the hospital and she asked me, very politely, the way she asks everything, whether I thought you would come to her funeral if she died. She wasn't being dramatic. She was making a plan. She wanted to know whether to put your name in the obituary. Emily put her hand over her mouth. I told her yes. I told her of course you would come. And then I drove home and I sat in my driveway for 2 hours and I decided I wasn't going to let her die without you in the room. So when the summit committee asked me to recommend a keynote, I recommended you. And when the hotel asked me which suite to assign you, I asked the manager very casually which housekeeper covered the presidential suite on Friday nights. Ash, I know, Ash, you set me up. Yes, you used my career. Yes, you used the biggest moment of my professional life to ambush me with my mother. Yes, Em, I did, and I'd do it again. Emily stood up. Then she sat back down. Emily sat with her hands flat on the table for a long moment. The candle flickered between them. Across the bar, a man in a navy blazer was telling a loud story about a quarterly earnings call. A woman at another table was laughing too hard at something on her phone. The world was continuing in its careless, ordinary way, and Emily felt suddenly furious at all of it. I should walk out of here. You should. I should walk out of this hotel and get on a plane tonight. You should. I should fire my publicist for letting me say yes to this. You should. Stop agreeing with me, Ash. Ashley reached across the table and put her hand on Emily's wrist. She did it the way she used to when they were 19 and Emily was about to do something self-destructive. Her hand was warm and dry and familiar, and Emily hated how much it steadied her. Listen to me. I'm not going to apologize for what I did, because if I apologize for it then it means I'm sorry I did it, and I'm not. I'm only sorry for how it happened to you. I'm sorry you found out the way you found out. I would have done it differently if I'd known how. But I'm not sorry that you and your mother breathed the same air tonight for the first time in 15 years. I will never be sorry for that. She works as a housekeeper, Ash. She cleans rooms, her hands are. I know. She lost the bakery. I know. Why didn't anyone tell me? Ashley's hand tightened on her wrist. Who was anyone supposed to tell? You changed your number. You stopped coming to reunions. When your Aunt Lenore died, you sent flowers. You didn't fly down. You weren't reachable. You were a closed door. We all gave up on knocking. Your mother gave up too. That's the part you have to sit with. Emily pulled her wrist back, not angrily, just because she needed it. She picked up the wine glass and drank half of it in one swallow. It was a good wine. She did not taste it. What do I do? You meet her at 11:15. I told her I would. Then you do. What do I say? I don't know. I really don't. But I think you stop trying to say the right thing and you just say the true thing, whatever the true thing is. And tomorrow you give a keynote. I have a keynote. You have a draft. Emily looked up at her. Ashley was watching her with an expression Emily remembered from their college years, the patient, slightly amused look of a friend who had been waiting for Emily to catch up to something obvious. You think I should change it? I think you should do whatever you need to do to be able to look at yourself in the mirror on Sunday morning. Emily finished the wine. She stood up. This time she meant it. I have to go upstairs and think. Okay, Ash, yeah, I am very angry with you. I know. I don't know what the second thing is yet, but there's a second thing. Take your time. Emily walked out of the bar without looking back. She rode the elevator to the 18th floor with a man in a tuxedo and a woman holding a small white dog. None of them spoke. She walked down the crimson hallway to the presidential suite and slid the keycard into the door, and the little light turned green and she stepped inside, and the smell of lavender was still there. Faint, but there. She sat on the edge of the turned-down bed. She did not cry. She had not cried in a very long time, and she did not start now. She just sat with her hands on her knees and watched the digital clock on the nightstand move from 9:46 to 9:47 to 9:48. Then she stood up. She walked to the writing desk. She opened the leather folio. She picked up the 47-page keynote, the one about diversity in tech and the importance of representation, the one her communications team had spent 3 weeks polishing, and she dropped it into the wastebasket beside the desk. She sat down with a blank legal pad and uncapped her pen. She started writing. The coffee shop on the corner of Smith and Dallas was called Halpern's, and at 11:15 on a Friday night it was nearly empty. A medical resident in scrubs was hunched over a laptop in the back. A janitor was mopping the front entryway. Behind the counter, a young man with a sleeve of tattoos was wiping down the espresso machine and yawning. Barbara was already there when Emily walked in. She was sitting at a small table by the window, still in her hotel uniform, her cardigan pulled on over the gray dress. There was a paper cup of coffee in front of her and a second paper cup across from her, untouched. She had ordered for Emily. Black, no sugar. The way Emily had taken her coffee since she was 16. Emily sat down. She wrapped her hands around the cup. You remembered. I remember everything. For a long time, neither of them said anything. The espresso machine hissed. The janitor finished his mopping and disappeared into the back. The medical resident closed her laptop and left. Eventually, it was just the two of them and the man behind the counter who had the good sense to pretend he was not listening. Mom, I want to ask you something and I want you to answer me honestly, even if the honest answer is going to hurt. Okay? That night, 15 years ago, the fight. Barbara's hands tightened around her cup. I said terrible things to you. Yes, you did. I called the bakery. Embarrassing. You called it embarrassing. You said you had spent 4 years at the University of Texas reinventing yourself, and now you had a job in Chicago and you weren't going to come home for Sunday dinners at a flower-covered table on Holman Street and pretend you were still that girl. You said I was holding you back. You said the smell of the bakery was in your hair when you went on interviews and you could smell it during the handshakes and it made you feel small. I remember. I remember too. I want you to know that I have spent 15 years telling myself I was right. I know you have. I was not right. Barbara closed her eyes. I was 22 and I was scared and I was ashamed of being scared, so I made you the thing I was ashamed of instead. It was easier. I'm not finished. Please, Barbara opened her eyes and nodded. I want you to know that the things I said were not true, not one of them. The bakery was the best thing about my childhood. The smell of it in my hair was the only reason I made it through my first 3 winters in Chicago. I used to stand in the Whole Foods on Halsted Street and smell the bread and cry in the aisle because it didn't smell right. None of it smelled right. None of it was you. Barbara was crying now, quietly. The way she cried. The way she had cried at Emily's high school graduation, sitting in the back row in a blue dress she had sewn herself. I left because I was a coward, not because you were embarrassing. I was the embarrassing one. I was the one who couldn't sit at a flower-covered table because I was afraid that if I sat down I would never get back up. I would stay in that kitchen and roll out dough for the rest of my life, and I would be happy, and I was so afraid of being that kind of happy because everyone in Chicago had taught me that kind of happy didn't count. Emily, I am so sorry, Mom. I am so deeply sorry. There is no apology that is big enough. I know that. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm telling you so that you know, so that you have it. So that you don't go to bed one more night wondering whether I knew what I did. Barbara reached across the small table. Her hand was shaking. She put it over Emily's hand and squeezed once hard, the way she used to squeeze Emily's hand at the doctor's office. I forgave you a long time ago, baby. You shouldn't have. I'm your mother. I didn't have a choice. Emily lowered her head onto their joined hands and finally she cried. They stayed at Halpern's until almost 2 in the morning. The young man behind the counter brought them refills without being asked. He turned the music down. At one point he set a plate of day-old pastries between them, free of charge, and walked away before either of them could thank him. Barbara told her everything. Not in order, not cleanly. The way real stories come out, in loops and detours, with the small things mixed in with the big things. She told her about the contractor. His name was Dale Henneman. He had a tattoo of an eagle on his forearm and a wife who called him 3 times a day. She told her about the kitchen inspection and the yellow paper the inspector taped to the front door of the bakery. She told her about the foreclosure auction and how she had stood across the street in a pair of sneakers she had owned for 9 years and watched a man in a baseball cap buy her life for $41,000. She told her about the first year after. The studio on Telephone Road. The cat, Biscuit, who had been a stray she fed on the back step until he just moved in. The 2 jobs she worked for 18 months, the hotel during the day and a gas station overnight, until her knees gave out and she had to choose. She told her about the small Methodist church where she still went on Sunday mornings, and the women there who brought her casseroles when she had the heart attack, and the deacon who drove her to her cardiology appointments because she didn't trust herself behind the wheel on the freeway anymore. Emily listened. She did not interrupt. She did not try to fix anything. She did not pull out her phone and start making notes about which problems she could throw money at first. She just listened the way she had not listened to her mother in 20 years, and she let the story be exactly what it was. When Barbara finally ran out of words, she looked very tired. The kind of tired Emily recognized from her own face in hotel mirrors at 3 in the morning. "Mom, let me get you a room here tonight." "No, baby. Just for tonight so you don't have to drive home. My car is in the staff lot. I want my own bed. I want biscuit. I want my own toothbrush." "I'll be fine." "Then let me drive you." Barbara hesitated. Then she nodded. The drive to Telephone Road took 22 minutes. Emily had rented a car for the weekend but had not yet picked it up, so they took an Uber. Barbara gave the driver the address in a voice that suggested she had given it many times before. They sat in the back seat with their hands resting between them, not quite touching, not quite separate. The studio was on the second floor of a small brick building above a tire shop. The hallway smelled like coming from the apartment next door. Barbara unlocked her door and switched on a lamp, and Emily stepped inside. The studio was very small. A neatly made twin bed under the window, a two-burner stove, a round table with one chair, a bookshelf with paperback mysteries, and a framed photograph of Emily at her college graduation, taken from the audience, slightly blurry, the only picture in the apartment of any person at all. An orange tabby cat lifted his head from the foot of the bed and regarded Emily with the deep suspicion of a creature who had not invited her. "Biscuit. He doesn't like new people. He doesn't have to." Barbara stood in the middle of the room with her cardigan still on, looking suddenly unsure what to do with her own apartment now that there was someone else in it. "It's not much, Em. Mom, it's enough. It's clean. It's beautiful." It wasn't beautiful. It was small and worn and lit by one lamp with a crooked shade. But Emily meant it. She meant it more than she had meant anything in a very long time. Because the bed was made and the dishes were washed and there was a framed picture of her on a bookshelf in a place where she had not lived for 15 years, and her mother had kept her in this room the whole time. Emily walked over to her mother and put her arms around her. Barbara was so much smaller than she remembered, or maybe Emily had finally gotten close enough to feel it. "I have to give a speech in the morning, Mom." "I know, baby. Will you come?" Barbara pulled back. She studied her daughter's face for a long moment. "Em, I can't sit in that audience in a housekeeper's uniform." "You won't be in a uniform. You'll be in the front row. I'll send a car." Barbara was quiet. "Mom, please come." "Okay, okay, okay, baby, I'll come." The ballroom of the Grand Lyric held 8,000 people, and at 9 in the morning every seat was full. The lights were warm. The stage was set with a single podium and a glass of water. On the screens above the stage, the words "Emily Whittaker, Senior Vice President," keynote address glowed in white sans serif against a deep blue background. Emily walked out from the wings to applause. She was wearing a simple black dress and the small gold cross her mother had given her at her confirmation when she was 13, the one she had found at the bottom of her jewelry box that morning. She walked to the podium. She set down a single sheet of yellow legal paper. She looked out at the audience. Front row, third seat from the aisle. Barbara, in a navy dress Ashley had bought her at 6 in the morning from a department store on Main Street, her silver hair pulled back, her hands folded in her lap. Ashley sitting beside her, holding her hand. Emily gripped the sides of the podium. "Good morning. My name is Emily Whittaker. I have a speech prepared for you about diversity in technology and the importance of representation in the C-suite. It is 47 pages long. It is in a wastebasket on the 18th floor of this hotel." A small ripple of laughter, uncertain. "I'd like to tell you a different story instead. It's the story of how, last night, I checked into the presidential suite of this hotel, and the woman who came to turn down my bed was my mother. I had not seen her in 15 years. I left her when I was 22 because I was ashamed of where I came from. She lost her bakery to a contractor scam 10 years ago. She has cleaned rooms in this hotel for 8 years. She is sitting in the front row. Her name is Barbara." The ballroom was completely still. Emily told it. She told all of it, the fight, the blocked number, the lavender hand cream, the way she had stood in the doorway of her own suite and could not say her own mother's name, the coffee shop on the corner of Smith and Dallas, the cat named Biscuit, the framed photograph on the bookshelf above Telephone Road. She told it without notes, without polish, without a single line her communications team would have approved. She told it the way Ashley had told her to, just the true thing, whatever the true thing was. When she finished, she said, "I came here to talk to you about leadership. I have nothing to say to you about leadership. I came home last night for the first time in 15 years, and my mother had to ask me not to make a scene because she was afraid of losing her job. That is what I know about leadership today. Thank you for listening." She stepped back from the podium. The ballroom did not applaud right away. It was quiet for a long moment, the particular quiet of a room where 8,000 people are deciding what they have just heard. Then somewhere in the middle of the room a single person stood up, then another, then a row, then the whole front section, then everyone. Barbara stayed in her seat. She was crying too hard to stand. Ashley was holding her with both arms. The clip hit the internet before lunch. By 2 in the afternoon it had been shared 500,000 times. By the time Emily landed in Chicago on Monday morning, 3 publishers had emailed about a book, and a producer from a morning show had called her assistant twice. Emily told her assistant to say no to all of it. She wasn't interested in a book. She wasn't interested in a morning show. She was interested in one thing. 6 months later, on the corner where the old bakery had stood, a new shop opened. Emily had bought the lot in cash. The sign above the door read Barbara's in soft cursive, painted by a local artist who had grown up 2 blocks away and remembered the smell of collages on Saturday mornings. Emily had offered her mother retirement, a house, a car, a trip to anywhere in the world. Barbara had said no to all of it. "I'll work the counter, baby, until I decide to stop." She worked the counter every morning. She wore an apron with her name embroidered on the chest. She remembered every regular's order within a week. On Saturdays, when the line wrapped out the door, a tall woman in a cream blazer sometimes stood at the register beside her, ringing up customers and laughing at the flower on her own sleeves. It was the kind of happy that counted. If this story touched you, please take a moment to call the person you've been meaning to call. Don't wait 15 years. Don't wait 15 days. And if you'd like to share your own story of reconciliation, please leave it in the comments below. We read every one. Thank you for watching.